Good afternoon, Maine. Chuck Ellis, and I am your host of the. Geez, if I can get my words out, that'll be great. I'm Chuck Ellis, the host of the Muddy Waters podcast. Thank you all for watching. The Muddy Waters podcast, as always, exists to help the people of Maine better understand what's going on in our state by bringing in different people, experts, legislators, business owners, and more to talk about what's really going on here in the state and in order to better understand what's going on. Unfortunately, the mainstream media is doing little to nothing to keep the people informed, especially if it's related to things that the Democrats are doing that doesn't look favorably to Democrats. The mainstream media is essentially an arm of the Democrat Party here in the state of Maine, playing defense for them and offense for them. And so we're here to try to combat that by bringing in people who tell you what's really going on, and you get the full story through these long-form interview style podcasts. So today, we are fortunate to once again have with us Mike Soboleski. Mike, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on again, Chuck.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. We had a great time last time. I know we went almost 2 hours. Don't worry, we're not going to do that this time. I blame you, though, mostly because you had so much to talk about, you know?
Yep. Had a lot going on.
It had a lot going on. So I wanted to, take some time and, talk a little bit like current events and what's going on. I know that I've been following the school board race, not race, but the school board situation with the health clinic in Gardner, which is your alma mater. And I know that you've been there and spoke a number of times, bringing up some really good points, but I'm not sure they completely understood the clear logic that you were using.
Well, it's been a real struggle with these school boards in a lot of ways, not only just with the health-based clinics, with the ACAAA policy that's been put in places. I was really encouraged what James Orr did at Augusta last night. Got that board on a 6-1 vote to revert back to the 2020 policies. So that was an incredible victory for there. I talked with him 6:30 this morning. Good job, buddy. Good job. Keep fighting. So I was glad to see that.
I think he craftily, I think they weren't even going to vote on it, but he found a way to make them vote on it. Encourage them and strongly encourage them to actually take a vote on it. So we definitely have to give him a lot of credit. Not only did he vote, but he pushed them to actually take the vote. So way to go, James.
Yeah, way to go, James. Nick Blanchard was a big part of that
Corn
effort
Pop.
as well. So those guys
Corn Pop, as he's known on X.
Did a great job. So I'm so proud of those guys for fighting that fight. Down in Gardner, they have the ACAAA policy. I've been down there a number of times, as you said, my alma mater, and so it's important to me. It hits home. When they started talking about putting this health-based clinic in, it's a health reach clinic, and it drew a lot of conversation in the community. A lot of parents came forward. We don't want that. They're looking at what Health Reach has done at the Bulldog School in Lawrence, and it hasn't been good. They've gotten some bad press. I think they're under a lawsuit right now. A little while back, they had a young lady that went to the clinic, a student. She was sent home with a baggie of Zoloft. It wasn't marked. It wasn't labeled. It wasn't no prescription number, no expiration dates, and it was in a baggie. It wasn't in a child-proof container, and they have young kids at home. When he called the school, the principal told him that the clinic is a separate entity and doesn't come under his control. So when he called the clinic to complain about it, they actually sent either the school or the clinic sent Child Protective Services to his home. And it was a mess. It was just a mess. So unfortunately, Health Reach has 12 clinics, one in the school, and they want to put this other one in Gardner. The rest of them are in communities, Bingham, Albion, Madison, small health clinics. But they did $26+ million in business in 2024 or 2023 or 4, I'm not sure. But 11.7 million was in drug sales. So it's raising concern. They've also said that they're in Lawrence, they have 7 students that they're keeping the treatment from the parents. They're not telling them what they're given for medications, what they're doing with them, Are they transitioning them? Are they providing with hormones, with equipment? They're not saying. So there's a real cause for concern with this health clinic. And they keep going forward and forward and forward. As I said, I've spoken to them about it. I got nowhere. So I went to the city of Gardner, met with the acting town manager, city manager, and code enforcement. We talked it out. About a week later, I went to the city council and I talked with them and I provided them the information, which says that the Health Truth clinics are a private nonprofit. They're a private entity. Doesn't matter profit or nonprofit. They're private. And the zoning for the school is ECR, Education, Community, and Recreation. So that's not zoned for it. I called back after that meeting about 3-4 weeks later. I called because I left them all the information to look at it and analyze it. And I called the code enforcement a few weeks later. What's the deal? What'd you guys come up with? He said that the school district had not applied for a permit to put a clinic in the high school, and if they did apply, it would be denied. So I took that message back to the school board, and they listened to it. This time was a little different, Chuck. Usually when I talk, that school board chair, she's down in her papers and talking with someone. She doesn't pay much attention to me. But this time she was listening. She was listening to everything I said. And I believe they knew it. Their policies state that they're not allowed to put a clinic in there as well. So they knew this. And I think they were just trying to, we're going to do it. We can always say later, oh, geez, we really didn't know, and beg forgiveness. But after I left the room, she said she had no idea what I was talking about. Shortly after that, I guess she said the city had called her and she was aware of it that way. So she contradicted herself. And I think they're in a bit of a pickle. One thing I do want to say about I want to say. What's that?
Okay. I was just going to say, just for clarity, because not everybody is familiar with building code. Basically, the town votes and comes up with ordinances to determine how certain properties can be used, and they have to follow that code. I think there are provisions in most towns for people to be able to get an exception, but before voting to create a health clinic, they should have a conversation with the code enforcement and figure out, and or the city council to figure out whether or not an exception can happen. Because if you're not allowed to have that type of business operating in this type of space, then you shouldn't be voting on whether or not you're going to bring it in, since it's against building code, right?
True. And can they actually just amend their own policies? And will the board go along with amending their own policies just for this one incident, for this one issue? But right after I did that down there, I filed a FOA request with with Fairfield, with Lawrence. And I received the documents back. And what I wanted was their memorandum of agreement with Health Reach. And it was interesting. And one of the, in the addendum on this, it says the district will ensure that the clinic site has adequate and reliable broadband internet access for HRCH to provide the services. District will also be responsible for providing and paying for utilities and custodial services for the clinic site, including without limitation, electricity, telephone, heat, water, sewer, cleaning, and garbage removal. HRCH will be responsible for the handling and disposal of biohazard waste and sharps, which basically means, and then it goes on in another section saying that any revenues that come into the clinic are the sole possession of the clinic. So the school gets nothing. They have to pay all the bills, pay all the utilities, pay the rent, pay everything, and they get nothing out of it. So does the community really want to do that? Do they want to pay the utilities for a private entity? So it's a fight. It's ongoing, and we'll see where it leads next.
Well, it's interesting. I appreciate you bringing that up. It's been an issue that, especially people who are on X and following different of the, we'll call it, social media influencers here in Maine, that this issue has been in the forefront. And I think it's one of the things. One of my frustrations with it, from my perspective, is that there's this argument. The whole argument behind it that they're using publicly is that, it's hard for parents to get their kids to the doctors and this, that, and the other thing. And so, and parents aren't prioritizing their kids' health, right? Like that's kind of the underlying assumption. And so we're just trying to make it easier for people to be able to access, healthcare. And like the first meeting that you spoke up at that I saw was, they were talking about how, kids need to be able to get physicals and different things like that. And again, like I understand where people are coming from there, but I feel like part of the problem in our society is parents are constantly giving over their authority and their responsibility over to the school system in general. And they don't really know as much what's going on. Parents actually are the people who care the most about their kids. And the idea of cutting them out of medical decisions and having them not be there to me is just a scary thought. Even if you're not talking about the issue, the fact that given the state of Maine law, 16 and 17-year-olds can be given transgender treatment without parental consent. Even if that wasn't the case, right? And they weren't giving out, I would say abortion medications, contraceptive, again, medical contraceptives, not just, and other things that I think are more in question. Just vaccines. There's that story that we brought up on Monday. I had Tiffany Kreck on, and they were talking about how that we talked about the issue where the parents tried to sue over the fact that their children was given a vaccine without their permission, and they ended up losing that case. And that's a unique situation. But the idea that these decisions, these medical decisions that have significant impacts on children are happening without their parents present to make it easier. I don't care how far parents have to drive to be able to be with their kids when they go to the doctors. It's just so important for the actual parent who knows the most about their kid to be there, because doctors make mistakes and they don't always have the best interest, kind of as you're highlighting with the drug conversation. They don't always have the best interest of children at heart. And they're not always, there's a lot of factors that they don't know about that the parents do that could also influence their decision. So that's a big issue on like so many levels, but in addition to the fact, the way in which they're going about it, which, again, they tried to sneak it in after Thanksgiving or in early December, and just everything about the way in which they're doing it. But yeah, glad that you kind of called them to the carpet on the fact that they're not even allowed to do it because of building code, and just keep fighting that fight. So we appreciate that. So I also wanted to talk, you had talked about a number of different bills that you were putting in, and one of them relates specifically to this, not to this, but to what's going on in the school boards with Title IX. Or it's parallel to Title IX, but it has to, yeah. So I want to talk about maybe some updates on some of the bills that you have submitted, where they're at, and what's potentially going on with that.
Well, the one that most directly is in line with this is my bill to remove the term gender identity from the Maine Human Rights Act. Everywhere I go and every time I have a conversation about this, it always goes back to the Maine Human Rights Act. And that was why I put this bill in. There's going to be a lot of them that are coming forward now to make changes to try and change, that boys can't participate. They're just a myriad of different bills that are being brought forward. But it's going to come back down to the same thing every time, the Maine Human Rights Act. That's the governor's reasoning that I can see behind what she's doing right now. And her argument with the president. I was with Grover Norquist on his show yesterday morning in D.C., and I talked about that. And for some reason, our governor believes that the Maine Human Rights Act is all powerful. And it's not. When President Trump wrote an executive order, which he's allowed to do, any president's allowed to do, to either rescind, repeal, replace, or amend a previous executive order. So when he wrote his executive order just a few hours after being sworn into office, which removed Joe Biden's executive order 13988 from the Title IX, which added the sexual orientation and gender identity to Title IX. When he stripped that away, that means Title IX stands on its own. That's it. And Biden actually, that didn't just affect Title IX. That affected the Civil Rights Act of 64, the Fair Housing Act, the Nationality or Nationals Act. There were like 3 or 4 of them that it all affected. But when it came to Title IX, and those things were stripped away from it by the Trump executive, then standing on its own, whenever federal law, the supremacy clause of the Sixth Amendment states that whenever federal law and state law conflict, federal law is the supreme law of the land. And that's in effect in every state. So right now, Title IX is the supreme law, and it takes precedence over the Maine Human Rights Act. But the governor wants legislation. She said she wanted the legislature to act. And my bill's been in there for over 2 months. And Governor, if you want to end this all in one swoop, have someone go to the revisor's office, get my bill out, get some Democrats behind it to support it, and get that passed through committee and on the floor, strip gender identity out of the Maine Human Rights Act, and this whole thing goes away. That's her out. You know, it's very simple on that. And that will take care of it. So I really wish they'd take a serious look at that and, take some action and put an end to this whole thing.
Easy way to get out of this, Janet.
Easy way to get out of it. It really is.
Just go ahead and have the legislature pass this. I mean, it makes the most sense. Like, the reality is, I've been saying this on this show, like, in the long run, the Democrats are going to lose on this issue. They are going to have to reverse course on this issue because the data, the science. I mean, we all know 2 + 2 = 4. They're trying to convince us that 2 + 2 = 5. We know it doesn't. We can see with our own eyes that a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl. You cannot become a separate gender. Your chromosomes will never change. This is a hill that if they choose to, they absolutely will die on. So there's a way for them to escape and to get to find another hill, another place to fight. And they should take that. You've given them a great opportunity. There's also another opportunity. I think Liz Caruso has in terms of sports. Liz Caruso has a bill that will address this in the sporting part of the world, which is only part of the problem. But it's interesting that you bring this up because, like, one of the other things that we talk about, there are at least 3 schools that I know of: Wyndham, Freeport, and now Augusta. Again, thanks to James Orr and all the other people who voted, but James made them vote. That have reverted back to the 2020 edition of Title IX. However, they all essentially cite that they're also still holding hand in hand the Maine Human Rights Act. So it's almost like, yes, we're complying, but we're not complying.
Yeah, I agree. And the problem with having gender identity in the Maine Human Rights Act is we have about 4 or 5 students in the state that are going down this road, boys that are going down this road. So what they're actually doing, that is less than a fraction, 100th of a fraction of 1% of our population. So by doing that, they're protecting the human and civil rights of that small little fraction of our population and forcing the rest of us, the 99.9999% of us, to bend the down on knee to the to the act, which is woke fantasy. Boys are not girls. Girls are not boys. XX is real. XY is real. So I really wish that they would deal with that and remove that from there and move on. Now, I looked back at when that was when that was passed and put into the law, and there weren't very many people that came to speak to that at all. I think there were 7 total, 1 against, 6 for, and there were mostly organizations and groups that were in favor of it. So it passed without really any knowledge, and I think that it did that one is because it was about adults at that time. And it wasn't being used, or the thought wasn't that it was going to be used against our children, or it was going to affect our children. And it was, right now, it's adults that are causing this problem. and it needs to be dealt with in an adult fashion. So I'm hoping that we can get it taken care of through legislation. We can put an end to this quickly. And as I said, Governor, if you want an end to this fast, get that out of the revisor's office, get it through committee unanimous, unanimous report out, get it on the floor under the hammer, and let's get it over with. And we can all move on. It's an easy, simple out for everybody, and it'll save face for the other side as well. So I really hope they'll take a serious look at it.
I hope so, but I'm skeptical. I think that I feel like they've gone too far down this road that they don't feel like they can turn back. Which I talked a little bit when I had Bobby Charles on yesterday, and we talked a little bit about this, and just I feel like they are so too ideologically tied to this issue, and they also I don't think that they believe that there will ever be any consequences to them. And I think that they're going to find out that they're wrong.
I think you're right there. I think there are consequences. Look what USDA's already done with the University of Maine system. That's real. That's a pause that's real. And the thing is that last year we had out of our budget biennial we had $5.1 billion to spend last year. We got $4.8 in federal assistance. So that's a lot of money to be gambling with. $4.8 million. The president didn't say, I'm just going to take it from your school. When he talked to the governor that day, which we all remember the tapes from it, he said federal funding, not school funding. He's gambling with a lot.
Yeah, no, it's a dangerous gamble, and it seems like, again, it's a lose-lose situation for them. So we'll see what happens with that. So what about some other things? So you mentioned, and there's a guy for people who don't know, and you can pay attention on X. I think Pine Tree Patriots is constantly posting about this, but there is a guy named Danny Emerson who's sending out information on go and testify on this bill, go and testify on that bill. But there's just so many things coming up. So if you had to say, like, what are some other bills that you think we need to get people out to address, to like give testimony for in particular?
Well, Liz Caruso's bill, definitely. That needs a lot of support. That's a good piece of legislation. I hope it does well. I really do. And supporting that, I think, is going to be very important.
And that one's to protect women's sports, right? It's to bar biological males from competing in women's sports.
And she's done a lot of work on that. She's done a lot of work on that. She's met with a lot of people, and she's gotten a lot of input from a lot of areas. So that's a really good bill, and I think that's one that we really need to get behind as far as that in that area. During the EV mandates, we were sidetracked. We had a National Resource Council of Maine did a regulatory petition. They got 150 people to sign it. That went through to the Board of Environmental Protection, and it was a direct assault on our legislation. They were trying to use the regulatory petition process against us without legislative approval. So I have a bill in which changes the regulatory petition process. Instead of 150 signatures, it is 1% of the last gubernatorial race. So it makes it a lot more difficult for them to get the signatures and to try and get that in. That's going to be important because any group at this point through regulatory petition process can do one of those petitions and effectively try and change our laws. So that was an important one, and I was glad to be able to put that one in and get that one through. Anything that's got to do, there's a lot that's got to do with offshore wind and with Sears Island. Representative Paul has got one in to deal with that. That's going to be an important issue. And, we're just dealing with so many. What I'm seeing now, I serve on 2 committees, and it's a different feel in Augusta right now. I think they're not as forward in their approach right now, the Democrats. I think they're a little back on their heels. I think they're in a position they haven't been in a long time. And they're so used to what we say is going to go. We dictate policy, we dictate the money. That's what they do. And look at the last biennial budget. We had 2 billion in that. And we're going to give you a seat at the table. We're going to be able to negotiate, blah, 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 blah. When it came down to the end, we were left out of the conversation. We were on the floor begging for 2% for a tax break for the poor. and the low class, lower middle class. They said, no, there's no money for that. But what did they do? They put through Office of New Americans, and they're taking money and they're sending that out to NGOs to try and bring 75,000 illegal immigrants into our state. They instituted the paid family medical leave program, which if you look at what the revenue stream is for that in the 24, 5, 5, 6, and 6, 7, they're estimated $880 million they're taking out of our economy for that program,
which is
basically
just
take 12 weeks off whenever you want, whatever the reason is going to be fine. We're not going to need that. That's going to take $500 million out of our economy and park it in a state account. That'll be the there. And then money will come in, go out, come in and go out. But $500 million out of our economy. That kind of lines up with the unemployment trust fund, unemployment insurance trust fund. We've got $730 million in that trust fund right now. And we only need about 450 for it to be secure and solvent. So all of the rest of that money, and they wanted $250 million a year, the DOL did, in each year in this next biennial budget coming up. We only spend 120, 150 million a year on unemployment. So they're going to pad that even more. And they're going to have close to $1 billion in that fund by the time it gets to the 2027 fiscal year. $500 million parked in that account out of our economy. They're doing it left and right. And one more thing. Recently, there was a report run on all the other special revenue accounts, and there is over $1 billion in other special revenue accounts sitting out there. Now, money comes in and out of them, but that is a humongous, huge, huge, huge number. So with all these accounts sitting there, state accounts with hundreds of millions of dollars in it that doesn't need to be there, it's just taking it out of our economy. It's actually hurting people badly.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talked about, in preparation for this, that I want to spend some time talking about, which you kind of started to highlight, is like people have been asking, right? When is Doge coming for Maine? And sorry for the people who have made comments. We're going to get to those in just a second. But people wanting there to be a Maine Doge, right? And you one of the things that I've seen reported on, but as I was talking with you, I was like, okay, I think I understand a little bit better why this is such a big issue from the conversation with you. So, part of so there are how many? If you want to talk a little bit, and then I'll ask a question, but talk a little bit about the number of open positions, as well as the ones that are being added, and then we'll talk. Yeah, I have some follow-up questions at that point, but
Well, we've got about 1,500 right now that are unfilled state positions, and they want another 250 in this next budget. And there is absolutely, in my opinion, my sole opinion, no intent to fill the biggest majority of those places, those jobs. And they're about $100,000 a piece. So we have right now $1,500, $100,000 slush funds. That's what we have. And they want to add another 250. If they need $120 million for this budget, for this supplemental budget, they can take it out of the rainy day fund. They can take it out of the unemployment. They can divert it right out of the unemployment insurance trust fund. We're way overfunded. That's very fat there. They can cut some of those positions, cut 1,000 of them out. That takes care of a big chunk of it right there. There's a lot of ways we can go about this. Not instead of taxing on cigarettes, tobacco and cannabis and prescriptions and streaming services and ambulance services and all of the other stuff that they want to tax us on. The money is there. We have it. They just refuse to use it. They want to take more from the public.
Which is crazy. So I just kind of the translation that I get out of this is that they have these open positions so that they can have higher budgets. Then they don't fill those positions, but they still spend all the money.
They still are able to spend that money.
Which is crazy. Like the idea, okay, 1,500 positions that don't need to be there so that they can justify a budget, and then they spend it on something else. And there's no accountability for that. And that's the other thing about that slush fund that you mentioned related to, the 1% employment tax for the 12-week, medical leave program, family medical leave program, that's going to build up a whole bunch of money that they will be able to. This is part of what's a little bit crazy to me, is that how easy it is for them to uh, to just spend money that is not
Yeah,
earmarked, and they
very.
can spend it without any accountability. It seems like.
Yeah, it is. And a little while back, I filed 15 forward requests with 15 departments in our state asking for NGO information. I wanted to know who the NGOs at the department are either giving funding to or grants to, how much it is, what the purpose of the grant is, where the NGO is. Is it in state? Is it out of state? Is it out of the country? Where is it? Within 2 days, I got a text message from an aide for the governor, Rep. Soboleski. I've seen your forward request. What exactly, is there anything particular you're looking for? My text back was nothing outside of what's in the forward request. And within a matter of a few days, I got an email from the governor's attorney. We found a flaw in your request. We're not going to be honoring it in a bunch of them. So they didn't want to give that up. But fortunately enough, the University of Maine system gave me their information, and so did the community college system. So we're looking at that right now to try and find out what money is going where, what it's being used for, who we're trying to support. We're trying to find what's being diverted out of that money, what's wasted money. So doing a little bit of a dive onto that one to see if we can come up with some more, information. Myself and I have a couple other people that are helping as well, and so that's why I say we. But we want to find out what's going on. Where's all our money going?
Yeah.
Where's it going? Our biennial goes up about $1 billion each time. We don't spend that much more. What they've done, and I said this on the show yesterday morning, what they've done is they put our government so fat on COVID funds, they bloated it. And now that all that money's dried up, instead of cutting some of these programs and coming back down to reality, Chuck, they just want more and more and more from us. And it's not just in these taxes that are in these budgets. It's also in the stranded costs, which are the public policy costs that they're throwing onto our electric bills. We had one from one major company that has about $170,000 a month electric bill, big business. And they got their last bill, it was a month or two ago, $220 something to $30,000, $57,000 just tacked onto it for a public policy charge. And that money's going directly to out-of-state conglomerates to build solar fields in our state, which we're calling it a solar tax, to build solar fields in our state. So now we're paying to build the fields, and we're paying for the energy that comes from them, but the actual amount of the energy is only a fraction of an amount, 1-2%, of contribution to the grid. So we're getting it from so many areas. It's like this chief executive and our government is trying to keep the middle class in Maine as down as keep them down, and a little upset. People are getting mad now. I think 26 is going to be a great election year for us.
Well, I think the economy is one of the biggest things that people tend to vote on, right? And I think that the policies of the Democrats are definitely strangling our economy here in the state of Maine. I think there was a report that was put out by the Maine Wire indicating that we were ranked 46th in the country in per capita GDP here in the state of Maine. And it really is the policy. So a couple of things, just since we're talking budget, that I just think are really, really interesting. So we had Jack Ducharme on here a couple of times talking budget because he's on that committee. And, one of the things that he shared that the first time he was on, which I just thought was incredibly fascinating, is how each budget, they don't go back and look at where they're spending and figure out if they need to increase in that category. So whatever category gets funding in the previous budget, that's the baseline, and they add to it automatically, and then they figure out what other things they're going to fund. Is that about right?
Jack would know more about that than I would.
Yeah. Well,
as far as that part of it goes, from going from one budget to another, I'm a huge proponent. And when I was running for Congress, I campaigned on some action I would take in Congress, and that was rollover budgeting. In our government, I've got to check it out with our state. I think it's the same way. At the end of the fiscal year, any money that's left, you spend it or you lose it. So they spend it on frivolous type things they really don't need. We've got 15 extra computers. Let's buy another 30. We've got the money.
Right.
So I'm a big proponent of rollover budgeting, meaning they can roll that money over into the next fiscal year, the next budget, and have less demand on the amount of money they'll need next time. But yeah, we waste so much money. Getting to the bottom of where it is very hard.
Well, and the thing that I wanted to point out from that, and people want to go back and watch, it's episode 6 on the podcast where Jack gets into like the minutia of that. So if you're interested in that type of stuff, which I imagine very few of you are, then that's where to go. Budget stuff is can be boring, but they just keep stepping up, and that's why things keep getting more and more expensive. And where that becomes really problematic, I think, was that we had a whole bunch of temporary funding that we got as a result of COVID, and they used that temporary funding to make permanent increases in a bunch of different areas, which is really, I mean, Maine has like a balanced budget. So they have to, with all that money coming in, they had to find a way to spend it, but they didn't have to create permanent spending, which is what they effectively did. And now they're having to, like, as you were highlighting with some of the taxes that are coming in, they're having to like create these huge taxes that put a burden on the main, all of our main people, especially, like you say, burdening the middle class. I say destroying and dismantling the middle class so that until it doesn't exist anymore. And we've got super rich people who profit off of the Democrat policies, and the rest of us are all living in poverty. Like that's where this goes. It's not a direct communism, but it's very similar, where the big businesses are essentially walking arm in arm with the government and in controlling the people. Because as much as the Democrats try to claim that they are for the people, their policies are for big business, and that's who benefits. Like this paid family medical leave, what this is going to do, mark my words, if you want to, like, it's going to put small businesses out of business. I was talking with a small business owner today just about this, and the problem with it isn't the amount of money that they have to pay in taxes. That's a problem. One of the biggest problems is the potential abuse and how these small businesses can only afford 5 employees. They can't afford 6 employees. They can't afford to hire a short-term employee while somebody takes a 12-week family medical leave. They can't afford that additional employee because they can't hire somebody part-time or for a short period of time to do the type of work that they need to do. So either they have to leg it with less people and risk significantly harming their business, or they have to take on another person and basically lie to them and say that this is a full-time, long-term position. And then when the other person comes back from leave, they fire that person, right? There are zero good options for our small businesses out there. This is why historically we have limited these types of policies to businesses with 50 employees or more. By removing that restriction in this situation, we're putting our small businesses at a disadvantage. Your bigger companies can handle having a couple of people out. That's why they, without the government forcing them to do so, had these types of policies. They have paid family medical leave. Like the FMLA is a required thing, but you're not required to pay for it. And so the company that I worked for, and a lot of your bigger corporations, they will pay people on their family medical leave because that's a competitive advantage. They're trying to attract employees. Now you're basically making it so much easier for them to big business to destroy a small business, and will only be left with big businesses. And the worst thing about working for big businesses is they don't treat their employees nearly as well. Maybe they pay better, maybe they have better benefits, but like in terms of flexibility and a lot of other things, they do not treat their employees as well as small businesses, as well as the fact that they don't give as much opportunity for average people to be able to make a career and make a business. If you build your own business, you can generate wealth for yourself. If you work for a corporation, as long as you follow their rules and do exactly what they say, you can make an okay living. The upward trajectory there. There's only a few CEOs, right? There's only a few of those higher level positions, and it's hard to scale that in a lot of your companies. And that, to me, that's like, the tax is a huge problem. It's a huge tax, and they're going to misuse the money. But it's the impact on small businesses, which I think is the much more nefarious element of this. And it seems like they're doing the favor of big business.
Well, it's also the technical skilled employees. That's the hard part. You get someone that operates a harvester, in logging. That's not an easy job to find someone that can go right in there. A technician, specific technicians. When I was talking with a couple of the big auto dealers in the state, they were like, I've got 4 service techs that write, at our service desk. If I lose one of them or two of them, it really is going to hurt our business. I have specific guys that do specific diagnostics and testing and things like that. And that's just in one industry. It's so it's going to be a big hurt. I think another thing that we need to look at in our state is our office space and what we own. Our government has. Yesterday, we had a gal that came in on the Grover Norquist casting that I was on. There was a podcast or whatever it was. And she talked about the federal government and just the IRS alone. There are 81,000 workstations in the IRS that they have, and 32,000 of them are vacant right now. They have 51% of their buildings are not even being used to a decent extent. They have 516 buildings, and 261 of them are at 50% capacity or less. And so I think the state needs to take a serious look at what's going on in Department of Labor. How much extra space is there? What can we use? How can we consolidate these folks and get them all, more streamlined? Maybe get rid of some of these buildings and cut down as well. I think, like you said, when we got bloated with COVID, they just went crazy. It wasn't just their pet projects. They've just extended the size and expanded the size of our government way beyond what's necessary. And unfortunately, they're not willing to have those discussions. I asked specifically about information in DOL for DOL, and finding out the number of positions they have, what's going on with them, the amount of money they're using and going through that department alone. It was staggering to me.
Yeah,
we need to trim our government down. We need to make some serious cuts.
Yeah, and it's a no-brainer, and instead they're increasing the budget at a time, increasing taxes at a time where Mainers are struggling the most. It's absolutely asinine. So we've got a number of comments, and I want to at least honor people for taking the time to comment. So T-Bods, I got to figure out who these people are in real life. But T-Bods, thanked you for your comments last Thursday at the school board meeting. And then Truth Air Media had a lot of things to say. Let's see. Talking about, I think this was talking about Mills in relation to their position on opposing Trump with Title IX, that she's not going to. They're illogical and they're not going to back down, which I think is accurate. Freeport, this is an interesting thing that I hadn't heard about, but Freeport apparently has an armed student resource officer who is trans. And the question is,
really?
That sounds frightening. And the comment is, how do we have a person with mental health issues armed in a school? That is a bit frightening. If that's
I
true,
have no response to that.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no idea what that's all about.
Scary. And again, if that's true, and I'm not doubting Truth Air Media, but I hadn't heard that until just now. And so, I think the other question is like how our politicians are worth so much money. Specifically, Mills is mentioned, at their modest salaries, and then why is our energy controlled by foreign conglomerate Avangrid? It's interesting that's brought up. Like one of the things, like 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, they tried to privatize. I say I think the Democrats, the socialists, tried to privatize energy, and I think the reason is that like CMP has really bad ratings. They were the worst rated utility in the country. I think last I knew, maybe that's improved a little bit. I know they've done a lot to try and improve their reputation. And so I understand why people are frustrated. But the idea, and I also, I have serious concerns about foreign investors owning something as fundamental to our infrastructure as electricity, right? So definitely have some huge concerns there, but and I think we need to figure out as a country how much, what areas. I do think that to some degree we should limit foreign investors in certain categories, right? Like I don't think the Chinese government should be able to own, not Chinese people, let's be clear, but the Chinese government should be able to own residential real estate and turn it into illegal grows and other things like that. And they're buying up real estate, farmland all around our country. That's dangerous to our national security. And so I do think that there's some limitations that we should place on that, but I don't think that that means that we should take over. And this is why I voted against that bill initiative a couple of years ago. I don't think that means we need basically government owned, electricity. But anyway, I'll let you speak to some of those things, Mike, too.
Okay. Well, as far as energy goes, if you look at energy costs right now across the nation, the cheapest electricity cost, Washington State. Why? Hydro. That's why. We need to get back to hydro and small nuclear reactors. I think that will take care of that problem right there. From what I can see, the offshore wind, I'm so grateful that the president's done what he's done.
Absolutely.
This is going to take care of these investment tax credits that they were going on. I looked at this a while back, and up and down the eastern seacoast, just along the New England, down to New York, there were a dozen offshore projects going on. All of them had a 30% investment tax credit. There were a few of them that were applying for more because they couldn't make it work. There was one that couldn't sell electricity because it was too much. New Bedford had pulled out. There were 6 or 8 of them out of the dozen that were having serious problems. So it wasn't going to work anyways, and it's still not going to work. And I fully support Representative Reagan Paul in her efforts to protect Sears Island. I think that's very important for us to do. So knowing what we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel as far as offshore winds. We don't need it. We don't want it. It's not necessary. It hurts our wildlife, our marine life. It's a huge eyesore out there. So I'm really glad to see that go. But we need to get back away from these solar fields, get back away from the green new disaster, and start doing what makes sense. And that is small nuclear reactors and hydro. Checking with Seabrook to see what their supply is. What can we do down there? Can we make a good deal? What can we buy from them? And I would, if I had the pen, if it was up to me, I would write an executive order immediately and put an end to that Green New Deal in our state. Get rid of it all. We don't need it. And I would, one at a time, do the best I could do in dismantling these solar farms and getting back our farmland and preserving our environment, because I think they're an absolute disaster. One thing, this is going to be this statement's going to really get me in trouble. But
I'm looking forward to it.
Being on the Environment Natural Resource Committee, I have learned that environmentalist lobbyists only care about the parts of the environment they're being paid to care about. That's it. If it's a nest of eggs that's 100 feet in the woods, they will trample, burn, and kill everything between them and that nest to protect that nest. They won't care about the moles and the voles and the squirrels and the rabbits and the partridge and the trees and the grass. They don't care about any of that. That's what we got to protect, is that. And that's it. And that was incredibly evident last week in a bill that Reagan Paul brought before EUT, which was to test any area that they want to put a solar field in for PFAS and do constant testing for PFAS to ensure it's not seeping out of the panels. It's in the back panels, the front panels to do that. The environmentalists come in. Nope, we're not going to do that. We don't want to do anything with PFAS around a solar farm, around a wind farm. But they are more than on top of it in any other way you can. So I was not surprised to see them do that. So as far as energy goes, that's where we go. Foreign investment, I don't believe. I want to see growth, definitely, in any way that we can get it. Sustainable growth. I'm for growth taxes that increase growth. I'm for deregulation. If you want to deregulate, if you want to put a new regulation in, kill 2. Let's try and get government out of people's lives. They need to be out of business, and I want government out of my life. And I'm sure everyone else does. So when it comes to foreign investment, I believe in foreign business being here, but
Yep.
you want to be here, rent the property, rent the land, rent the building. I'm not in favor of foreign ownership of any American soil.
Yeah. No, I think especially if we're talking the CCP, but yeah, we're talking about energy. I'm really hoping at some point. I think she's interested. She's just busy to get Reagan on the show. She has expressed some interest and to talk about energy because she is, from everything I hear from down in Augusta, she is the one that is the most schooled in that and is spending the
Yes.
most time on it. And we appreciate everything that she's doing. And yeah, I mean the farce and the joke that the Democrats want to kind of push out to the world is that Republicans don't care about the environment. And the
That's
reality
true.
is we actually do care about the environment. We just disagree with them and their special interest groups that are paying them off and paying for their campaigns to get bad policy that's actually, as you said, harmful to our economy. I think that's the biggest thing that we're talking about. Not harmful to our economy, harmful to the environment. That's reality. Solar and wind are harmful. Not only are they incredibly costful, but they're costly, I should say, but they're harmful to our economy. I was trying to say costly and harmful at the same time. Costful. Okay. Anyway, I'm inventing a new word, but yeah, they're really bad for our economy and just not what we need here in Maine. On top of the fact that yes, they're an eyesore, but the fact that they're an eyesore. Hey, if this eyesore was generating enough energy so that we weren't having to buy energy from Canada, for instance, which is what we have to do, which is why people were up in arms about the potential energy tariffs, right? Yeah, which we should think about, like we need to have the energy coming from our own state. Why are we not? And it's because these types of things are not generating enough energy. If they were, I'll put up with the eyesore. But it's the fact that they're not. They're costing us a crap ton of money, and they're not providing enough energy to actually help us.
Keep talking for just a minute. I got to plug the phone in.
Yep.
Keep going.
No worries. No worries. Well, now is a good time to bring up, in case you were wondering, in case you haven't been watching and you haven't heard this yet, and you haven't been paying attention to X or any other form of social media, this weekend, there are a couple of different events that you can attend. One is an event that's being put on tomorrow night at the Augusta Civic Center at 6:30 by Turning Point USA. You've heard of Charlie Kirk. Turning Point USA is an organization he started. He's not going to be there, but there's a Kennebec chapter of Turning Point USA that is holding an event. Both of these events actually are in relation to protecting women's sports and women's spaces. So tomorrow there's going to be an event, and I can't remember her name. I'll put it up on my X page soon. But there is a woman. I think her name is Olivia, and she's part of the Riley Gaines.
Yes.
What is it? The coach Riley Gaines has a program for young women. I think it's a leadership program. So she's part of that, and she was herself targeted for free speech when she was in school, and she's going to be coming. She's going to be at the Augusta Civic Center. This is a great event if they're young teenage girls who want to see somebody who could be a kind of maybe not a mentor, but somebody to look up to. This would be a really great opportunity to get connected to what Christina Parker is doing with Turning Point USA here in Maine. So that's tomorrow at 6:30. And then on Saturday, Mike, do you want to talk about what's going on Saturday?
Yes, Chuck. Thank you so much. I'm very excited about this. We started about a month ago putting together an event to support girls in sports, Title IX, and Maine Girl Dads. And that's come together. It's going to be this coming Saturday from 11 to 1 o'clock at the Capitol, between the Capitol and the Cross Building. We've got a great lineup of guest speakers. Chloe Cole is going to be there, and I'm so excited to have her there. She's an American activist. She's been traveling around the nation with politicians and other people talking about transitioning. She had transitioned at one time and has detransitioned. And she's talking about what that is all about, what it's like, what it does psychologically, all of the implications of that. So I'm really excited to have Chloe be a part of this. Additionally, it's going to be Heidi Sampson. She's the founder and creator of the Maine Education Initiative. Heidi's been working on girl issues for a long time. She works on the decline of education in K through 12 in our school systems. She does a lot of work on that, a lot of work with school board members, with parents, and I'm so excited to have Heidi be a part of it as well. Katrina Smith, she's the minority whip in the House. She's very active in supporting girls in athletics. As well as Reagan Paul is going to be there as well. She does a lot of work on it. Bobby Charles is going to be there. He was Assistant Secretary of State under Colin Powell, worked in the Bush White House, HW, and the Reagan White House. He is an incredible speaker, very knowledgeable about all of these issues, so I'm looking forward to him as well. Steve Robinson is going to be there from the Main Wire. I know, Chuck, you're going to be there as well. And I'll be hosting the event. It's going to be a great event. We're expecting a really big turnout. The last one was, a couple of Saturdays ago.
Yep.
I was fortunate enough to be able to speak on that one. We had about 500 people there for that. It's going to be a great day. A little overcast, but they're not predicting any rain. 50 degrees. And it's going to be a really, really great event. We're hoping for a really big turnout, and I think we will. It's been out online. It's getting shared a lot out there. So the word is out, and I appreciate you bringing it up and talking about it, Chuck. I really do.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited. So one thing I want to say is that, like, with I think I'm credited at least by some people as being partly responsible for the event that happened on March 1st, and I think I also had some conversation with you about, like, in the early stages of getting this going. I'm not taking credit. I'm saying I was a little bit involved, but I remember the one that came together on March 1st. Really kind of came together very organically and naturally. A lot of people wanted to do it, but it happened really quick. And, everybody, like, some of the things that people at home don't always understand is how incredibly busy and stressful the life is of our legislators. And so something coming together that quickly and trying to get legislators to actually show up to that event is very challenging. And so I just want to shout out to every one of the legislators, including yourself, who on very short notice made time to come and be there. This isn't to say anything negative about people who weren't there. That's not the point. The point is, like, people have schedules and they have plans, and you guys, like you, Katrina Smith, Alicia Collins? Is that her name?
Collins, yeah.
And then there was one other rep. I can't remember his name though. That was also there.
Well, we've got but on next Saturday as well. But on next Saturday, we've got to start off the event with Jim White's going to give the prayer. Tammy Smershel Burgess is going to sing the national anthem, and wait until you hear her. She is absolutely incredible with it. And Chad Perkins is going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. All representatives, state representatives. So we do have a great contingent of representatives that are going to be there, and thank them all for stepping up for this.
Yeah, and I also I think that there are some younger people who are going to be there as well, student athletes and stuff like that, speaking as well.
Yeah, we have the all three of the girls that lost to the pole vault guy, the track star guy, the Nordic Crest guy. They're coming as well, and we're going to give them a little time to be able to say hello. And this event is not a protest. It's not an anti-anything. We wanted to do just support, just a support, and let the girls know that we're there for them. We're fighting in the trenches for them. We have been for a long time. A lot of these folks, myself included, have been fighting these issues well over a year, for a long time. And we want to let them know we're making progress, and they have our support, 100%.
Well, thanks again. I really appreciate you guys doing that, and I think I'm really excited for the lineup. Again, for me, Chloe Cole, like, I was talking to Heidi about this, and that's when I first learned that Chloe was going to be at this event. I think again, she's probably not. She's not just an activist. She's not just a detransitioner. She is the most vocal and she detransitioner, I think, in our country, and she is the one who's out there doing so much to try and raise awareness to this, and how she was effectively manipulated into into this. And so if there are any people around the state of Maine that also fall into this, would be a great opportunity to kind of hear from somebody who it's really happened to. I believe we do have people here in the state of Maine who have gone through this as well and just have been afraid, I think, to speak out, because Maine, it's funny, this is an 80-20 issue, and yet we still feel like we're in the minority here in the state of Maine because the other side is so loud. And so that's why we need to be loud as well. We need to give women and men here in the state of Maine who have also started to transition, realized it was a mistake, backed out, the space to speak. And we need to support them and encourage them. And bringing Chloe here is a really great opportunity, I think, to do that. And I'm really excited. So if this would be a really great event. I hope everybody that can make it shows up. And I'm excited to see what happens. I think there was.
And let me just say that what President Trump had to say in his address to all the children out there: "You're beautiful the way God made you." What a fantastic statement, and it's so true. You are, and that was an incredible statement for him to make, and I was really taken by that, because it's true. You're beautiful the way God made you, and if you have any problems in that and trying to figure life out, talk to someone. Just talk to someone. That usually helps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And bringing up Trump, I think, is like all of this is coming to the point where it's coming to because of Trump being elected. Like, one of the things that I always want to highlight before we go is just how what Trump getting elected gives us an opportunity, right? It gives us. It's like we've been drowning, right? And we're now up above. Our head is now above the water, and we can breathe, right? But the fight's not over, right? Trump cannot take back this country for us by himself. We, the people, need to step up. I'm going to gripe a little bit here. I'm tired of people saying the GOP needs to. If you're a Republican, by the way, you are the GOP. If you're like, well, I'm not actually a Republican, I'm a unenrolled or an independent, it was like, okay, but do you want the GOP to do better? Okay. You have to get out there. You have to help. This is called we're not a democracy per se. We're a representative republic, or a democratic republic, and that requires the people who have problems to step up, stand up, and get involved. And we need you to get involved, because without the average person, we cannot do this. We cannot win this fight. We will enjoy, if we don't step up and if we don't do something, we will enjoy this great time, this little reprieve while Trump is president. And then at the end of it, it all goes back the other direction, right? So we need, if we don't do our part, we need to do our part. We need to get out there, have civil discourse, have conversations with people, and help them see the truth of what's actually going on in our world, in order for us to have a chance to take back our state and to hold and maintain control over our country. It's so important for us to do this in order to be able to save our democracy. If you think that we've won and it's over, you're missing the point. We are still very close. Like, one of the things that I like to point out, because I feel like I have to, is despite the fact that Trump won what many are calling this mandate, where he had a very substantial victory in the electoral college, many of the states that he won that gave him that substantial victory, he only won because of the extraordinary efforts of average people like Scott Presler. I think people are like crowning Scott Presler as some king, as though, oh, we need Scott Presler to come here. I'd be happy to have him, but we don't need him. We need the people of Maine to do what he did. What he did is he just got people registered to vote. He's not like, he doesn't have any magic wand. We can do that here in the state of Maine. We need to stand up. Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk in Arizona worked really hard. Another thing called 10X the vote. These are people in those states working really hard to make this happen. And even with that, we still barely won all of those swing states. So our country is very close to going in the other direction, despite how awful of a candidate Kamala Harris was. So we have to keep that in mind. There's still a ton of work to do, and we need you, the people, all of us, to work together to make that happen, and not ask somebody else to do it, but we need to do it. So engage, get involved in the process. one of the easiest things that you can do is share videos like this with people. There are going to be shorts that come out of this. You can share those with other people. You can do stuff in social media, but we actually need people to show up to school board meetings, to show up to city councils, to be willing to run for school board and city council. We need people to be willing to go door to door, be willing to have conversations with your friends and neighbors who you disagree with in a civil way. As much as it depends on you, you can't force them to be civil, but you can work really hard to be civil, even if you believe that they're wrong. There's so much that we can do and we need to do. And if we don't win in 2026 and you sit back and you're like, well, the GOP didn't do this and the GOP didn't do that, and you didn't get involved, I'm not hearing it. I don't care. Right.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, we had a great election day, no question about that. But one thing that sticks out to me is on that day, we had 8,500 new Republican registrations statewide that day. The Democrats had 3,900. So we did our job, and people came out. And make sure you're registered to vote. That's huge. I know there's a big drive going on right now on the nominating petitions that was circulated around the state. Anything that was marked with an NR not registered and they weren't counted as part of the count in the petitions, they're sending out letters to them and cards out to them. That's all the Republican side. Register. Make sure you're registered to vote, because it is going to be important in 26. We're only a few votes shy in the House. We're only a few shy in the Senate. If we can make that difference, we can take control of the House. That's number one. Then we get the constitutional offices. And I've said for a long time, the most important position in our state right now is our Attorney General. Unfortunately, our Attorney General we have right now acts more like a defense counsel for this administration than he does as an Attorney General for the public. And the Attorney General is an incredibly important position to have. And being able to control the House gives us the right to appoint our Attorney General, our Secretary of State. Secretary Bellows is termed out. I don't think she can be Secretary again. That's the end of it for her. So they'll be getting a new Secretary of State regardless of what happens there. And but everybody needs to make sure that they think about it now. Check your registration. Make sure you're registered to vote. And if you're not, get down and do it. It's going to be important.
Yeah, and get your friends and neighbors to show up to vote and to register to vote. It's really easy. You can I don't like this necessarily, but you can actually register to vote online. Or you can fill out the cards at your town office. It's really easy, quick, easy. It doesn't take much time. It's not a huge hassle, and so I highly we need to do that. And I think that's one of the biggest things. There are so many people that are actually unregistered, it blows my mind. But do your part, get involved. There's so much you can do. If you have any questions about what you can do and how you can help, let me know. I'd be happy to talk with anyone. You can reach out to me on X or any other way. And the other thing that I would say is, like, if you're going this Saturday, there are a bunch of petitions for Maine girl dads. And I just briefly want to make a point about Maine girl dads. I don't always, so I got to collect my thoughts. But one of the things that was exciting to me about Maine girl dads was not, was that it's a space, like, in our world, it feels like men are under assault and manhood is something that is undesirable. They talk about toxic masculinity, and usually, and it, as a way to describe men being men. And then some of them claim, no, we're talking about toxic masculinity. And it's like, it seems like you're talking about the same thing. But anyway, there's not a lot of space for men to be men and to do the things that we're supposed to do, which is to protect and take care of and provide for women and children. That's my understanding of what manhood is. And so I was really excited about the fact that we have something that's promoting men being men and taking care of their daughters. And I think that's really awesome. And I'm just so thankful for that. If you agree and you want to help, on Saturday, we're going to be carrying boxes of the petitions. And I need some men to show up and help me carry those boxes, because I can't carry 20 myself, because there are a lot of petitions, and we're going to end up delivering those to the Maine Principals Association. And so if you can show up on Saturday as a man and help me with that, I would appreciate it on behalf of the Maine Girl Dads. And Mike, before we kind of drop off, we have a question in the chat. We've got this question before, but we'll let you answer it again, which is, do you plan to run for governor?
Well, I get that question a lot, and I appreciate it very much. The field for governor, CD2 for Senate, the Senate race, Senator Collins' seat. There are a lot of names that are being banded around right now, and we'll see. There's a lot of work left to be done, a lot in our state and a lot in our nation, and I'm not done. I want to be in. I want to stay in the fight, and I want to keep working. So I'll make that decision. I've always said by July 1, and I will. But I do want to stay active and keep working. I enjoy the work I do very much, even the hard stuff. So, I can't make that decision right now, but I will sometime soon. And before I go, Chuck, let me just reiterate one more time. Governor Mills has an out on this entire issue. And it is my bill to remove the term gender identity from the Maine Human Rights Act. That ends it. Because that's the obstacle that's in the road right now. So if you have any contact with the governor, please bring it up. Let her know that it's there. It is the way to get out of this thing. It gives her the out as well. And it's a legislative process which she's asked for to have happen. It's got to come out of the revisers. It needs to get into committee. It needs to get onto the floor. And we need to take action on that and put an end to this. This attack on our children is basically what it is at this point. So if anyone has, the pathway to help with that, I'd greatly appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike. Thank you for what you're doing and for continuing to fight for the people of Maine. One of the things that we have is we have a lot of good fighters down there in Augusta, and you're one of them. And I appreciate you taking the time to spend so much of your time focused on trying to help the people of Maine. So thanks. And we'll see you on Saturday. Well, I might see you tomorrow night, too. I'll be there tomorrow and Saturday.
Right. See you tomorrow then. All right. Great.
All right. Thank you all. We'll see you back. I'm a crazy person, and today I am doing another podcast because I had the opportunity to have the real Corn Pop, but he works late, so he can't come on until late. So we're going to do a late podcast tonight. So the real Corn Pop is going to be on. We're probably going to hear more about Augusta school boards and school boards in general. And Corn Pop is always entertaining. Or Nicholas, what I forget his last name because I always know him as Corn Pop. Nick Blanchard. So we'll have him on. Who knows? We may share a best of and show some of his speeches as part of the show. But if you have time and you want to watch another one today, feel free to join us. And we'll have we've got a couple more fun people coming on next week. So we look forward to seeing you. And thanks so much again, Mike. And we'll see you all later.
Thank you. Bye.